Good evening, folks, and welcome to episode 200 of the Sticks in the Six podcast. That's right, we hit the secondary century mark, episode 200 of the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, here with my co host, Peter Barricchini, and we are heading into that kind of interesting part of the summer before we hit that August, the dog days in August. We've got the draft coming up. We have free agency coming up. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to free agency. Of course, the saga of Mitch Marner continues. But before we get into
Part
all of
two.
that, part two, yeah. Before we get into all of that, before we get into the draft, the combine, all that fun stuff, Peter, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, doing good, man. Usually we record in the afternoon, try to get a head start on everything, but had to do some renos within the house. Had to call the electrician over, and man, seems like everything I learned something new about this house. I didn't know. Okay, well, two things. We had to change all of our outlets, but all the outlets were completely old and worn down, which could lead to something bad. And also, all of our outlets were painted over.
Nice.
So everything was like loud drilling, hammering stuff out, and I can't believe that. Obviously, it's a bit of an older, like my place is a little bit older, but still painting over outlets. Like common sense should dictate that you probably shouldn't do that, and this is probably one of those reasons why where it could have led to something very, very bad. But thank God we got it over and done with. So that's one less headache to worry about right now.
I won't even get into the insanity of what we walked into when we bought this house about 7 or 8 years ago. Um, we decided we were gonna go down the road of gutting our kitchen, redoing it ourselves. Never done home renos in our lives when we
Mm-hmm.
bought this place, so we did that. All was going well, and then electrical work came in, and it seems like a previous owner of this house decided that he was gonna like fully amp the outlets in the kitchen. So I'm talking like the most high powered outlets I've ever seen.
Oh my
Like
God.
I'm talking like two breakers for one outlet in the kitchen. So
Man.
and it gets worse than that. We pulled out the dishwasher, open electrical underneath the dishwasher.
Oh, Jesus Christ, man.
Just a normal water source and open electrical, but
Yeah, because that's not
I'm
a
I'm not a
that's not a major like incident waiting to happen. Like, oh my
yeah, right?
God,
Like I'm not an electrician or anything like that, but I mean, I would say that's fairly unsafe.
fairly
Um,
unsafe. If one of those faux pas that you probably should not do.
yeah, that's right. Anyway, so painting over outlets, yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those older type of things to do, but it's you know the mayhem of walking into an older house sometimes is just it's insanity.
Hectic. Yeah.
Anyways, we do have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Obviously, if you tune into Prospects Corner over at the Hockey Writers this past week, we had a massive group. I mean, this is the
Hmm.
first time in a long time I've been on Prospect Corner. There was six of us sitting there just kind of shooting the shit about the combine and the draft and
Yeah.
what better way. Matt always does a great job of hosting those shows. Obviously, Mark was there and Dayton was there and yourself and it
Yourself
was
and Chris.
yeah, myself
Yeah.
and Chris. It was a great time. Obviously, Chris, Mark, and myself were at the NHL Combine in Buffalo
Hmm.
this past weekend. Normally, you're there with us. Obviously, you couldn't be there this
Yeah.
time around, but as always, it was a lot of fun. I'm talking 30, 40, 50 prospect interviews. You're transcribing, you're writing stories. You got Mark's notes, clearing the notebook afterwards. That's always got some
Notebooks,
good
heights and
nuggets.
measures, all that
Yeah,
fun
yeah.
stuff. By
So
the way, if you haven't checked out that Prospect Corner episode, check it out at the Hockey Writers right now.
yeah, it was a hell of an episode. A lot of great conversation on some key draft prospects that we're gonna see later on this month. But yeah, outside of all of that, before we get into the hockey talk, obviously this is something we wanted to talk about last week, but we didn't get around to it. We are making the final pledge. The Leafs' final count had us at $41.34 to the Gaudreau brothers organization to help kind of deliver hockey, the game of hockey, to those who might be less fortunate. So again, as we've mentioned throughout the year, we based it on what we could relatively afford on top of that, based off of the goals scored by Leafs over the preseason, regular season, and postseason. And that was the outcome, was the $41.34. So if anybody wants to, contribute or match that or whatever, reach out, DM. We can certainly send some more, and we'd love to give whatever we can. We want to try and do another organization this coming season, so we're gonna kind of make this a regular thing for us here at the Sticks and the Six podcast.
Yeah.
Again, we don't make a ton off of this podcast, but what we do, we want to try and give back as well. It's a platform for us to speak. It's a platform for us to kind of share social issues and discuss that. And yeah, it's something we'd like to do. So
Mhm.
if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you follow us on all the socials as well. That will help us for next season, the next organization that we jump on as well, that we can give back a little bit more. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Outside of that, awards are starting to be handed out these past couple weeks. If you haven't watched the emotional video of Johnny Gaudreau's widow, Meredith, delivering the Bill Masterton Trophy
Mhm.
to Sean Monahan at his house just outside of Toronto, you gotta watch it.
Yeah.
Like it had me just wrapped up in
Choked up.
tears, man. It was
Yeah.
it was it was such a moment and such a way to celebrate a player who has gone through the ringer this season. Not only with Gaudreau's passing, but he lost obviously his best friend, but he also lost a family member. He lost there was
Teammate.
he lost a
Mhm.
teammate. He dealt with injuries this season. He was in a new place in Columbus. He had signed there so he could play with his former teammate Johnny Gaudreau. So just so much. It was very emotional to watch. Well deserving.
Yeah.
There's many candidates who are well deserving, but he obviously has gone through quite a bit this off season, or this past season. Cale Makar wins the Norris Trophy. Spencer Carberry wins the Coach of the Year in Washington. How could you not give it to him? And then Lane Hutson wins the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year. I don't want to get into all of it, all of the other the awards, but I want to get into this one because there was some speculation going in who was going to win it. There was a lot of commentary around Macklin Celebrini all season long. He
Mhm.
had a hell of a season. You had Dustin Wolf in Calgary, but at the end of the season, with what Lane Hutson did to push the Montreal Canadiens over the edge and into a playoff spot, kind of the most deserving candidate for the Calder Trophy. What are your thoughts on that, Peter?
Yeah, I think, towards the halfway point of the season, I think you kind of got the sense that Lane Hudson, Dustin Wolf, Macklin Celebrini, I mean, I think Mitchkov was still in that conversation, but it kind of felt like the first three were going to be those finalists. Lo and behold, they were. And honestly, even towards the end, it just kind of felt like Lane Hudson was running away with it. I mean, how could you not give him the award with what he accomplished, the amount of points that he did as a rookie or assist? Because I think there he broke or he was in like a kind of a category with a lot of premier Hall of Famer defenders where he had 60 plus points, the amount of assists that he had, and he was in some historical categories or like some categories historically there. And for him to do that, that just kind of blew everyone out of the water. Dustin Wolf was very impressive. I think he wouldn't, if Calgary kind of made the postseason, I think you're looking at a little bit more of a neck and neck race between the two. But what Dustin Wolf did to push Calgary into the spot that they were, he's deserving of the second spot. Celebrini, San Jose was not really in a competitive spot, but he himself was, dynamite. He gives them hope for the future. But the way that Hudson just dominated every single point and from start to finish, he was, a man on a mission. And yeah, you could mention now how he doesn't have the size or whatever, but he doesn't. That's not his forte. He's very elusive. He's very deceptive. His edges, pivots, the way he's able to walk the line, the way he's able to get pucks on net, the way he's able to feather it through, traffic and through those seams. It's impressive. And Montreal's been waiting for a long time for a strong puck moving, offensive minded defender. He's their guy, and he's already got some hardware. And now the next step is for him and the whole entire team to take a big step forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will say I'm a little shocked that Celebrini did fall to third. Just with the season he had, the injury he dealt with early on, the team that he had surrounding him wasn't, you know,
Great, especially after they sold off
yeah, it wasn't great at all. I mean, Zetterlund got moved. Um,
Granlund, CC.
Granlund got moved. Cece got moved. It was just I was a little shocked to see him drop to third, but I can understand that in that, Dustin Wolf had one hell of a season for the Calgary Flames, and like you said, had they made the playoffs, I know it's not supposed to reflect that, but I think it would have been a bit of a different conversation. But anyways, yeah, Lane Hudson's well deserving of what of the award. What a season he had! What an
Hell
unbelievable
of a
season he
season.
had.
Yeah.
It was, it was such an incredible run for the Montreal Canadiens, and even it didn't turn out the way they wanted in that first round against Washington, but I think this is a great stepping stone for that organization, and to
Yeah.
know that you have that piece along with the Suzuki, the Slavkovsky, the Caulfield, to know that you have that piece, and like Owen Beck's kind of like this.
Jacob Fowler
Their
coming up too.
Jacob Fowler's coming up. Their cupboard is full. Their
Hmm.
cupboard is jam packed. So if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan listening to a Leafs podcast right now, get excited because
Yeah.
you got a ton to look forward to. It's going to be an exciting run over the next few years for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah. 60 assists and 66 points. I mean,
Yeah,
that
just
alone as a rookie defender is very impressive. So if you're able to hit, again, we've talked about this plenty of times on Prospect Corner. If you can hit the 60 mark as a defender in your rookie season, then, or not even 60, like 50-point mark, then you're looking at possibly winning that award. I think Cale Makar had that when he won it. He had 50 points that year. Yeah, I think that the fact that Hudson was able to just absolutely demolish that record says it all. So yeah, very impressive.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. As for the Leafs, it's going to be another long off season. There's going to be a lot of conversations about what's to come, and who's going to end up where, and we're gonna see some of that once July 1st hits. But right now, if you're on the X first or whatever the hell you want to call it, if you're on any kind of social media,
Rumors are flying.
rumors are flying, and we've heard Vegas, we've heard Anaheim, we've heard Columbus, and we heard that the last time he re-upped with the Leafs that Columbus was going to offer sheet Mitch Marner,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're even more interested. And we've heard Carolina.
Yeah, I was about to say Carolina. You're hearing all the teams, possibly Florida.
We've heard Dallas. Like
Yeah.
Dallas doesn't make sense. They have way too much. Like they're
already
tough.
having an issue with Jason Robertson right now, and they're looking to offload him. Unless you could trade him and sign Marner, oh boy. But they're in a mess themselves right now, which we never thought would happen.
Yeah. The sleeper pick might be Utah. There's a lot of conversation around Utah wanting to make a big splash now that they've built through the draft over the last number of years. They want to make that. They want to go and get that it guy.
They're on the cusp, so they have the pieces to move out and bring in actual talent.
Yeah, and there is obviously I mentioned Anaheim off the top. There's conversation right now that Chris Kreider could be heading to Anaheim. Is likely heading to Anaheim, and they're going to eat his entire contract, which means I'm not sure they're going to have the money long term for Marner, but who knows?
Yeah.
All these whispers, all this smoke, there's still this like tiny little bit of hope in Leafs Nation that maybe Mitch Marner comes back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's highly unlikely with what we're hearing, but I will say this. I have it on a good source that if he does not sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mitch Marner is going to the Western Conference.
That seems fair.
That would knock off Carolina,
mm-hmm.
and from what I'm hearing, it seems like it's going to be not a smaller market, but a market maybe not so much in the thick of things. So not a Chicago,
Anaheim.
Yeah, I like that. Not an LA, not a Dallas, not a. I'm thinking more.
It's more Anaheim, Utah, those kind of teams.
Here are my three. These are my top three, and I'm gonna throw it out there just because why the hell not? I got Anaheim. I have Utah.
Yeah.
and then I have San Jose. And the
Fair.
reason I say San Jose is all of a sudden you have a guy who's played 10 years in the league now with Macklin Celebrini. Likely, very well could be Olympic teammates. Who knows? Um, and on top of that, there's a little guy that lives out there named Joe Thornton, who
Hmm.
had quite the impact on the Leafs when he played that short time with the Maple Leafs. So connection, I don't know. You've got
Especially if
that
there's a
that
possibility of a sign and trade too. I know we talked about this extensively last week. Like, is it going to be a sign and trade where you could get that max value, or you're just going to trade his rights for? Like, if you're able to sign him, like if Toronto does sign him and then they ship him out, okay, that kind of makes it a little bit more sense. If it's the rights, then it's going to be a little bit smaller, or the return's not going to be as huge. But San Jose does have a first round pick, or they have 2 first rounders. They have their own, and they have one from Dallas that they got for Granlund and Cece. So if they're willing to part with one of those first rounders, and they got a good cupboard full of prospects, who knows what can happen? And especially if Toronto does say, hey, we'll sign you this, but we're going to send you to whatever, but it doesn't quite make sense, because why not just keep your no move clause and then sign on July 1st kind of thing, right?
that's
So
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's where my head's at. My head's at like if this guy didn't want to waive his no trade clause at the
for
deadline,
Carolina,
and rightfully so that he was given that, he was handed that,
mm-hmm.
whatever. I have this inkling that he's gonna I think he's gonna fuck over the Leafs if he does not sign with the Leafs. I don't
Doesn't
think he
surprise me.
he waives his no trade clause
Mm-hmm.
to get his rights traded to a team that could possibly sign him. I don't think he waives his no trade clause in a sign and trade.
Yeah.
My understanding from what I'm seeing, and again, these are all like this could possibly happen, this maybe happen, this might happen, is that he's not so much interested in the 8-year deal as much as he's interested in the best possible situation for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean an 8-year deal at $13.5 million.
Yeah.
So
It could be a multitude of factors. I know he just had a kid too, so it would most likely make sense that he would probably want to stay in Toronto because he's just starting off with a family, as we mentioned not last week, but the previous week before. But yeah,
would you want to go down to SoCal right now and raise a family?
Mm,
I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, like realistically, right?
Realistically, yeah, it's we're not going to go down that road, but yeah, I mean, it just seems like you mentioned, the fit itself, he will fit very well in any 3 of those environments because he is now going to be essentially the star. If he's going to be on the top line, he could essentially be on the top line with or be alongside Logan Cooley. He could be alongside Leo Carlson. He could be alongside Macklin Celebrini. Those are going to be the type of players that he could try and mentor and, bring them up as well because of his veteran presence and push them a little bit forward. But are Anaheim and San Jose and even Utah really that close to being playoff ready? Utah, maybe. Anaheim, possibly. San Jose still ways to go. So you have to wonder you also got to weigh it out too. Is he going to be in a spot where he can win now? Is that important to him?
Yeah, I think that plays into it. I mean, like we said, he's 10 years in the league. I guess my other question then is, and we talked a little bit, we sprinkled this into last episode, is he a guy for we have to assume he's going to get 13.5 million.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Rantanen,
it's in that range,
deal,
13,
yeah.
13.5.
So is he a guy that can, no doubt, year-long 82 games into the playoffs, carry a team? Because at the end of the day, if you're making 13.5 million, even with the cap going up,
you're the guy.
You got to be one of the guys. We're talking a McDavid, Draisaitl. We're talking a McKinnon, Rantanen, Cale Makar. like game changing, carry the team when their backs are against the wall. You're coming out and you're getting it done.
And
Is he that guy?
I was just about to say he had an assist in Game 6, but where was he in Game 7? You want to get paid like a McDavid, like a Draisaitl, like a McKinnon, who shows up constantly, even in big game moments, even if they lose. Those are different stories. Mitch Marner in like games 5, 6, and 7 has not shown up in any way, shape, or form. And if you're getting paid $13.5 million and the playoffs do roll around, then there's going to be another fan base that's probably going to be upset.
Now, in saying all that too, though, we're looking at the Stanley Cup final and how Florida's doing up against the Edmonton Oilers, and I mean, once again, the argument can be made that the Leafs have put up the best fight so far against the defending and possibly two-time Stanley Cup champions.
I will
Right?
say this: the first 2 games were electric. It was a back and forth affair. So it kind of seems like Edmonton is that other team, but you saw what happened in Game 3. That was just basically games 5 and 7 equivalent that the Maple Leafs played against Florida.
Yeah. It makes you think, though. It makes you think about the Maple Leafs and where they could be if they'd gone past the that second round. Anyways, the Marner saga is going to continue. I guarantee you that every episode we do from here on out is going to have Marner's name in the title.
Some point,
we're going to be talking about Marner at some point. When free agency rolls around, he signs elsewhere and doesn't have his rights traded or doesn't waive his no trade clause. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of anger there.
I was only bringing up that San Jose thing because it just brought back to the whole, like, are we going to trade his rights? Are we going to trade him or sign him and then fully trade him? Again, you rarely see that anymore. Like, if a player does have a no move, it's 100% likely that he's going to walk, carry it, and then sign with the other team. Like you said, it's probably just going to be that instance where he just probably screws over the Maple Leafs. And, you know, honestly, the whole entire fan base would not be shocked about it because of all the reports that came out last year with the whole 3-team Vegas trade. This year with Carolina. It just kind of feels like it's going down that road and everyone is preparing itself for it.
Maybe one of the best examples of a mismanaged asset in Leafs history.
And this is more mismanaged than Mats Sundin. Really.
This is more mismanaged than Tuukka Rask.
Yeah. Yeah, and he wasn't even signed. There you go. What I mean? Like, yeah, that's a perfect example.
I would take Raycroft for Tuukka Rask any day than watch the Leafs fumble fuck this Marner situation all over again.
And this is the problem with no move clauses in a way where, you kind of have this. And again, I'm going to go back to what Tree said during his press conference, and it kind of leads me to going down that path where Marner's not going to be a part of this. The DNA and structure needs to change. They got a little bit of that. They signed those defenders in the offseason. They brought in players like Lutton and Carlo. Who else is going to be a part of that DNA? Matthew Knies is definitely going to be a part of it. Nylander and Matthews are definitely going to be a part of it. This is on Mitch Marner right now that if you're going to want to play this type of structure, you're going to have to change your play style a little bit.
It's interesting you brought that up because the conversation afterwards from Nick Kypreos was that the DNA comment was targeted at John Tavares. And that Nick Kypreos came out on the Kipper and whatever show and noted that he felt like the DNA comment was directed at John Tavares and that he would not be back as a free agent this offseason.
Okay, but he was also probably one of their better forecheckers, board winners, anything in the dirty areas where Mitch Marner is afraid to go. I'm pretty sure John Tavares would probably go with that, would be a part of that DNA group where he has shown that willingness and that drive to win. I think that comment, again, I don't see how you could use that comment towards Tavares more so than Marner when Marner's play is the one that kind of needs to change. And I
No,
go back
I
to that
absolutely.
game five muffin up the middle where he's trying to like dangle and like a weak backhand, and it's like, what are you doing? To me, that doesn't fall on John Tavares at all. So
Yeah. No, I just thought it was interesting. You brought it up, and I remember reading
yeah.
that comment afterwards. Last thing about Mitch Marner, before we change the pace here is
Mm-hmm.
there was a question that was brought up not long ago on social media. If Marner leaves once his career is finished, did the Leafs retire Mitch Marner's number? I'll,
Yeah,
I'll,
that
I'll
I know what question that was like. Oh, was that Overdrive or like something on TSN 1050?
yeah, it was
It was
TSN.
one
It
of
might have
those
been
two.
Overdrive.
Yeah. Again, everyone is like, this is gaslighting, isn't it? Like, this is really trying to like stoke a fire in the fan base. And I'm under the impression, has he won anything here?
It
He's in the history books, great, but what have you done for this team? Clark and Gilmore have at least gone to conference finals. Sundin has gone to a conference final during that Sundin era. Actually, they went to multiple conference finals in that late 90s, early thousands era. What have you done to help make this team successful and win aside from individual accolades? That's where
yeah.
I'm at. And you could easily say the same thing about Austin Matthews. You could say the same thing about William Nylander. But the difference is, it seems like Matthews and Nylander are going to be pieces for this long haul.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I tend to agree with you. Um, we'll get a couple comments here. Longtime listener, voice of the fans, Canada. Hot take: considering Marner signs with a new team, Marner will be that team's captain by the 27 season. Are we
Mm,
talking? Are we talking
interesting.
27, 28, or 26, 27? 27, 28, I assume.
I mean, I would probably say, you know, let's give it. I would give it a little bit of a little extra leeway. I would say 27, 28. It depends on the team and who
Yeah.
else is coming up. That to me is my question. So, yeah.
Okay, two more comments here. What truly is the difference between Marner and Sundin and conference final versus awards? Marner's won a Selkie.
He has not.
He has
He's
not won a
been
Selkie.
nominated,
Yeah, he has not won a
but he
Selkie.
has not won it. Yeah.
Maybe deserving in some seasons. You could say the same about Matthews. Matthews has
Mm-hmm.
been deserving. Um, for me, like the difference between Marner and Sundin, the way that contract negotiations have happened over the last 9 seasons with Marner, it never really went down that road with Sundin. Sundin
Mm-hmm.
earned his no trade clause. He had the right to turn it down. He ended up signing midway through the season with Vancouver the following season. He played half a season with Vancouver. I mean, Marner's in the prime of his career right now. Sundin was ending his career, and finished off with a half season. I mean, it didn't really. Who knows what they would have got at the deadline for him? Right now, Marner's in the heart of his career. He's at his
Yeah.
prime, and he's potentially going to screw the Leafs by waiting till July 1st and signing as a free agent rather than allowing them to trade his rights. And to me, that goes a long way about what kind of player, what kind of legacy you're leaving. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not saying Marner's a bad person. Marner deserves every ounce of going and getting his bag. Like that's what he's
It's
earned
the
by
nature.
by these personal accolades. That's what he's earned. But um, the legacy that you leave is different than the person that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the legacy that he's going to leave as a Toronto Maple Leaf will not allow him to have his jersey or number or whatever retired with the team anytime in the very very near future.
Yeah. That
And
year where Marner was third in Selkie voting, Nico Hischier was ahead of him, and Patrice Bergeron, surprise,
yeah,
surprise, there, won it that year.
remember too that the Leafs never retired numbers before. It
Mm-hmm.
was they honored numbers, and the only numbers they ever retired were players that had passed away while wearing the jersey.
Yeah.
Um, it was only in recent years that they legitimately retired those numbers, and let's not forget the relationship that a guy like Dave Keon had with the organization after he was ousted.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like a vice versa. This is the way that Marner's going to leave his legacy and the way that he's leaving the organization. I think it's gonna leave a sour taste in not only the fan base's mouth but the organization's mouth for a
Yeah.
very long time. I don't see his number getting retired.
Mhm.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Okay, Jonathan Toews. There's again a lot of conversation
Yeah.
around Jonathan Toews. He wants to make an NHL comeback. He's what is he? 39?
I would say 37.
37. Okay. Man, I'm aging him. He's the same age as me. 37. He wants to make an NHL comeback. He's been in India doing like a lot of work with the body and the mind and getting himself back on track. He truly believes he can make an NHL comeback. Probably going to get him for a relatively low deal. I would say
Mhm.
maybe
You're
a
looking at
little
league
higher.
minimum.
Yeah, I would say a little bit higher than league minimum. Rumors are that there's a potential that he could be brought in as a veteran presence in the Toronto lineup. Now, there's also rumors that Pacioretty is going to be back with Toronto. There's the idea that possibly Tavares could come back as well. I want to get your thoughts on this veteran, not so much a veteran movement, but the idea of bringing in a guy like Jonathan Toews, who has won cups, who has been there, has been through a lot throughout his career, and really we have no idea what he's able to bring to the table anymore.
I mean, I don't mind it, but I don't think it's good for what the direction the team wants to go down. I get he's got that veteran presence. I get he's got the championships. Yeah, he was also on the decline after the 2019-20 season, but he's also been out of the league for close to 3 years right now. You're not getting the same Jonathan Toews that you got in the past in his prime, what have you. But I don't know. It just doesn't quite fit the bill of how they want to play. I think they want to get a little bit faster. They want to get a little bit more intense. I don't know if that kind of fits the MO of Jonathan Toews' game. I get he's very smart. But I don't know. I just feel like there are better options that you could look to address at the moment, and you could get players that are fresher and still in the league as opposed to one that hasn't played in 2 years. And I get he was out trying to improve on what was ailing him. I get that he's healthy right now, but it just kind of seems like a really, really big risk, even for a league minimum with the cap going up. And you've already had that interest where you're probably there's kind of seen that mutual interest with Pacioretty. There's that mutual interest with Tavares, and I get that Toronto's on Toews' team. I kind of feel like because he's at the tail end of his career, you don't know how much longer he's going to have. It kind of feels like he will fit the bill for Winnipeg. Go home, hometown kid. I feel like he would go there more so than Toronto. But I feel like with the Leafs, yeah, it could work, but it couldn't. Or it may not work out. So I feel like there are other options up the middle that you could probably address for cheaper, and you could probably get still steady production. You don't know what you're getting with Toews at this point. So you're kind of like not necessarily playing with fire at this point, but you got to decide what's right for your team right now. Is he one that's going to fit the bill and could come in and make an impact under Craig Berube? Possibly, but there's also the possibility that he may not.
Well, there's one reaction. Toews to Toronto. God, no. If you're tuning in right now, what are your thoughts on Toews to Toronto? I will say this. I think I like the idea of Winnipeg. I think it would be what a move it would be for the Chicago Blackhawks to bring Jonathan Toews back in to help Bedard kind of make that transition.
That seems more likely because then you would have Bedard, Nazar, possibly Oliver Moore, and you could still have Toews on your 4C or 3C, and then you have Oliver Moore on your 4th. You already got some really good center depth there.
But I will say this from a Toronto perspective. Why not a PTO? If he's willing to do it and he wants to come to Toronto, and there are signs that point to him wanting to come to Toronto, possibly. Why not offer him a PTO? And if he really wants to come, he comes and earns that spot. You get a chance to see what he can do, and then maybe possibly sign him if you're impressed with what he's able to do. You're not locking yourself into anything. You're not committing to anything, but you're giving yourself the opportunity to see what a guy who's taken 2 years off of the game um, to kind of revitalize himself as a person, you get a chance to see what he's done, the work that he's put in, and what he can offer you from that veteran type of presence. Um, I think I don't think there's any harm in saying, hey, look, we'll put this PTO on the table. If you're interested, great. We'll see you at camp.
Yeah.
If not, best of luck wherever you go.
And that still opens it up to other teams if he doesn't sign here. There's still going to be
Absolutely.
other teams that'll pounce all over that.
I could just see I don't know why, but I just see like Chicago being all over that.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Would have surprised me.
why like after the tumultuous season that you had and Connor Bedard being like just pissed off and aggravated with what the season was like for him. Why would you not bring in a guy who's done it, who's been
Yeah.
there, who's
Been a face of that city for God knows how long.
face of the city, but
Yeah.
also like an international competitor in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like what he did for Canada as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibilities there, but yeah, I guess he's narrowing it down. And should have an announcement over the next little while on what the potential move for him is. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Jonathan Toews front. Anyways, before we get into all the draft conversation and the combine conversation and what came from the combine, just a quick word from our friends over at the DraftKings Sportsbook. The fastest game on ice just hit another gear. Welcome to the Stanley Cup Final, where legends are made and every shift could turn the tide. And now the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can take every slap shot, breakaway, and overtime thriller to the next level. New to betting on the Stanley Cup Final? You're in for an exciting time. Getting started is a breeze. Fire up the DraftKings Sportsbook app, pick your team to win, lock in your wager, and you're off to the races. It's fast, simple, and puts you right in the middle of the action. I know for me, I've been taking the overtime winners. I also took Draisaitl in game one to be the first goal scorer of the game, so you can lock in those odds as well. They pay very well. I'm talking
Worked
like
out for
nine
you.
times your money. 9 times your money to pick first goal scorer. Here's the kicker. New customers who bet just $5 will score $300 in bonus bets if their wager hits. That's right, turn $5 into a Stanley Cup final payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN. That's code THPN to unlock $300 in bonus bets when your $5 bet wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Minimum minus 500 odds required. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Copyright 2025 NHL. Anyways, last comment on Toews here as well. His last cup was 11 years ago. An 82 game grind will be too much with so much on the line. No, absolutely. And that's why I say, like, there are guys who have found a way to keep themselves in shape at that age. I go back to like Gary Roberts at his age after breaking his neck and the work
Yeah.
he put in. And there is a possibility to keep yourself at that competitive level. But you can't just sign him to a contract and hope for, like, you're talking about Robidahl Island here. Like there's the possibility that you sign him and he's just an absolute dud. Yanni Hakanpää this season. Like it's just you have to make sure that he's the right fit. So for me, if you're the Leafs, you offer him a PTO. If he doesn't want to take it, so be it. If he does, maybe you give him the opportunity to see what he can do at camp. But that's as far as I'd be willing to go on that front.
Yeah.
Okay, draft combine. It was a hell of a day. It was a long day.
I was just about to say, Andrew, would you like me to ask you what your initial thoughts were and what was the biggest standout for you during this year's combine?
Yeah. My initial thoughts, it's the same every year when I get there. I'm overwhelmed. I usually drive in the morning of, so I'm overwhelmed. I'm looking at 50 plus, 60 plus prospects who are there doing these incredible physical testing. Some of them come up there, they've just been sick from doing the VO2 and Wingate, and I'm standing there like, what questions do I ask? Who do I go talk to first?
Yeah.
It is a very overwhelming day. At the same time, once you take that breath and you kind of get your footing under you, um, it's off to the races. And you're in, before lunchtime, you're in 30 scrums talking to 30 different prospects, asking them, 60 different questions. So the day itself, as always, at the harbor, the Calm Harborfront Center in Buffalo, they did a fantastic job of putting up that event. Um, my biggest takeaways is there's there's a lot more depth to this draft than I originally thought,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot more competitiveness to this draft than I originally thought. Um, you do your final rankings at the Hockey Writers. I do my final rankings at the Hockey Writers. I had Frondell slip to number 6, I believe, in my final rankings. And at one point at the beginning of the year, he was fighting for number 1.
Mm-hmm.
But in talking to him and in talking to some of the other Swedes, I mentioned this on Prospect Corner. The word elite came up. Arvid Drott called
Mm-hmm.
him an elite player.
That I saw, yeah.
Called him a generational player. And it's not often we throw around that word generational. Like that's a word we use for Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. So that was interesting to me. The idea of how competitive he is. He stick juggles in the hotel rooms. He uh, he just wants to win. And when I talked to him about that, his big thing coming back was, I don't consider myself generational. I consider myself somebody who wants to be the best in every game that I play. And that to me was like, man, light went off. I want to be
That'll resonate with a lot of teams.
Yeah, I want to be the team that gets Anton Frundell.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not going to be the team that gets Matthew Schaefer at the top of the draft, who, by the way, if I can raise a kid to be as amazing of a human being as Matthew Schaefer, like that kid, like I didn't know how far we wanted to go on Prospects Corner with this, but that kid is a fucking amazing human being.
Yeah.
Like he's a stand-up, incredible, down to earth, just a stand-up human being.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the chance to ever talk to Matthew Schaefer, if you have the chance to be in his presence, like he took a day out of his time to go to a grief center in Buffalo on the night that he was supposed to graduate from high school.
Yeah.
To go and be with people who are going through things that half of us can't even imagine. And he went there because of everything that he's been through. Lost his billet mom to suicide. Not like what 2 months later lost his mom, his biological mom to cancer. When he was away at the World Juniors, the owner of the Erie Otters passed away. And it's not like the NHL. That these are close-knit organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, for him to have not only go and do that on the Monday night of the Combine week, but to have the willingness to talk about it amongst like a scrum of no-name journalists, man, this kid's phenomenal. And whatever team gets him, like, forget what he does on the ice. This kid's going to be one of the greatest leaders your organization's ever seen.
And that's the thing where at this combine, it's great to see the character come out with all these players. We've seen it in the past. Last season, where like the personality and the character was really shown. Same the one before that. Watching or reading along and following along what you said and what Mark said and what Chris said in terms of like Schaefer's presence and just how he is as a human being off the ice. Teams are going to love that character. They're going to love that you know, that willingness to go out and make themselves known in the community and make themselves a part of it, and they have that asset or that presence to relate to everybody. And that to me is going to be very huge for him because he's got great character. On the ice, we already know that, but off the ice, even the stories leading up into the draft, even dating back to last year, the stories that I've heard, like his character is off the charts, and he's just a really, really great human being.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Going from there, Michael Misa was a great interview. Keyshawn Aitchison, like
Cash.
he's buddy, like this kid's got fire. This kid's got fire.
I love that.
And just so much confidence. Like it's actually unbelievable. My biggest takeaway from a Leafs perspective is the fact that they talked to Jackson Smith. That to me was like when I first asked the question. They didn't talk to him this week, so I want to clarify that they didn't talk to him during the interview process. They've met with him multiple times throughout the season.
That is a little bit different than actually meeting up with him and going out to dinner during this week. And I think Mark has already talked about this too on that episode of on Prospect Corner, where, talking during the season is a little bit different than that. So the interest is there if and when anything does happen.
It's more of a process, right? And
yeah.
And another interesting takeaway was there was not as many dinners this year as there has been in previous years.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of prospects that were taken out by teams. Pittsburgh seemed to be the ones taking a lot of people out. So Kyle Dubas spending the company dollars on making sure that he gets those prospects that he wants. But that one was big for me. I know I said this on Prospects Corner. I think the Leafs are looking at a big defenseman with their first pick, which will be the 63rd overall as it stands right now.
Could be 64th. Could be the very end.
Yeah. So it'll be in that 62 to 64 range. So they're gonna, as it stands right now, they're looking at a big defenseman. So they may want to try and move up. Again, you can read my piece over at the Hockey Writers about some of the guys they talked to. Sasha Boumediene's the guy that they talked to.
That could be. I honestly think he could be one of those wild cards
that falls a little bit.
That had a good, strong second half, that improved the stock, that could still be taken in the first or the latter half of that first round. But teams may still have a little bit of skepticism of that. But his mobility and his size at his two-way game could be something that the Maple Leafs could inquire about if he fall. I personally don't think he should fall past 40. He could go anywhere between 25 to 40. That is my range for him. But if he goes to 63, 64, he's one of those names where he shouldn't fall, but he may. And I think Toronto could easily take advantage of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, there was a number of big defensemen that they talked to. They didn't talk to goaltenders. I talked to Josh Ravensburger. They right now I think they're stocked, cupboard full on that one. I'm going to give you a name that I don't know if I tweeted out, but I know they talked to. And this one's incredibly interesting because he was named by some of the Swedes as one of the toughest Swede to play against in the draft. Milton Gastrin.
Yeah.
And the Leafs talked to Milton Gastrin. And man, I don't know about you, but like that's a guy I wouldn't mind getting my hands on.
It's a good thing I saw you tweet that out. And I'm like,
okay, so I did put it out there. Okay.
He is definitely one of those character leader guys that lays it out all on the line, and he will do whatever it takes to win. It's been a consistent factor. U18s, Hlinka Gretzky, this whole entire season, may not put up the points like maybe Frondell or Eklund may, but he has got a great motor. He's got that drive. And again, we talk about like players that could fit the system going forward. You already have that kind of player in Easton Cowan where he could put up the points, but he's got that, he's got that dog to him. Gastrin may not put up the points, but he's still got that dog to him. And I think that, and it's a good thing because if there was one player that I thought that Toronto could have a chance or a forward to grab, it's two Swedes, Theo Saxelius and Milton Gastrin. I still think Gastrin is going to be a first rounder.
Yeah.
But if, like we mentioned, if there's any point where Toronto does trade up, even into the early part of the second round and Gastrin's still there, you take advantage of that and you take him. because I think he's going to be very effective. He's going to be a great leader. He's going to be a great energy presence as a middle six forward. He's one of those players that I really do like, and he's at the end of my first round. But if he becomes available in the second, again, kind of like Boumediene or Boumediene, I you can't pass that up. And I'm glad that you talked to him, and I'm glad that you mentioned that the Maple Leafs talked to him because he seems like a really great player.
Yeah, yeah, no, he's the second his name was brought up as like one of the guys that might be the toughest Swede to play against. I was like, you know what, like bring him in because
Toronto all over. Yeah,
Swedes have that like little bit of an edge that they play with, right? And it's that Scandinavian kind of like edge that I don't think people realize is there sometimes, and it's Peter Forsberg was famous for it.
Yeah,
he played with a little bit of an edge.
And we see that, obviously, we don't see it a whole lot with William Nylander. But when there comes a point where he needs to like make his presence felt, he may not be a thunderous hit, but he can make a big hit, or like he's not afraid to lay the body. Like he is built.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Anyways, one of the other big takeaways, and this kind of one that I've had a focus on, and we will get somebody who's making this jump on to the podcast, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but. The big CHL NCAA conversation, it's starting to take off, and we're seeing guys jump. Jack Ivankovich, Malcolm Spence are two big names out of this draft that are heading the other way. Cole Reshny's another name. There's a lot to still unpack when it comes to this conversation. What's the landscape of the CHL going to look like? The OHL is going to have to change, probably get a little bit younger, more of a development league. And then the NCAA is going to get more competitive, which means there's going to be players that won't be able to play NCAA that might have to sign in the CHL for their next chance at continuing their careers. So a lot of pieces that still need to go into this conversation. While we're talking here too, I just want to bring this up. There's like this is the extent of the rumor mill around Marner. So Frank Saravelli just talked about, I guess, on Daily Faceoff that Vegas seems like the team that's going to sign him. They won't offer him the biggest amount of money, but there's a likelihood that that they could be the team that he goes to on like a $12 million contract. He also reported that things are very frosty, quote unquote frosty, between the Leafs and Marner right now, that a sign and trade is very unlikely. So kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. But yeah, it's just like
an option you could think about, but not going to happen.
Yeah. So like, just like, that's what I'm talking about. Vegas is thrown out now. Columbus is there. Like, it's just, there's so many teams being named in this that like, it's got to get tiresome for Mitchie as well, right? Like, this guy's got to be sitting there being like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with all this? But anyways,
I saw a little quick side note. I saw something here in the rumor mill that Toronto could offer up one of the two goalies to a team that could possibly, actually need a goalie, and then get some like players that are like in the NHL, or like young players in the NHL that could still jump and make the roster right now. So I don't know if there's any substance to that, but again, this was earlier in the day. I probably should have saved it in screen cap to give that person credit, but I don't know. It just kind of seems like an idea that could possibly be thrown around, that maybe you do move on from Joseph Wall and then you get something in return.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, no, definitely a possibility. Again, there's so much conversation right now on what to expect. But anyways, in saying that, I know you had some pieces on possible prospects over the second and third round for the Maple Leafs. What do you, with all the chatter from the Combine, all this conversation, what are who are your targets for the second and third round for the Maple Leafs?
Yeah, so I just want to start off quickly with the second round, and I don't, as much as I said that if Boumediene and Gastrine were available, the Leafs should take them. Again, were not included in here because I kind of feel like they'd be taken. But now that could possibly change, and they could potentially be selections made if they're available for them. First and foremost, I mentioned Theo Saxelius. I think this is going to be one of those, not necessarily a power forward, but a guy that's got a lot of strength and energy to his game. He's got the size, he's got the shot and playmaking abilities. Skating is not the best, but he's got a lot of tools that the Maple Leafs love right now. And seeing his play at the, he put up 51 points in 41 games as a 17-year-old in the J20. So that young at that age level, pretty impressive numbers and results for him. One that rose up for me, Bryce Pickford. The Maple Leafs need some offense from the back end. He's a right shot. He's a double overager, I believe, right now. And he had a fantastic run with the Medicine Hat Tigers down the stretch. His assistant coach was impressed with his work ethic throughout the season and his ability to be a complete defender. I think that he's fantastic. Matthew Guard, again, good two-way center. Little bit of physicality to his game. He's well-rounded. He's got that north-south game that I think the team loves. Quinn Beauchene, a little bit more offense, a little bit speed on the back end. Again, decision-making may not be the best, but, you could probably teach him to be a little less risky and tell him to pick or try to train him on how to pick his spots a little bit better instead of being always aggressive. And a big defender that you mentioned in your piece as well, and I'm glad we're on the same page with this, is Carter Amico. And the big thing is he did test very well, which is a good sign that, he didn't miss the whole year with a leg injury. So the fact that he was there, healthy, testing, should be, easing the nerves of some teams because he was potentially supposed to be a late first rounder. Was starting to pick up a little bit offensively this year. He was probably going to be the best defender of the NTDP, but that injury happened. But that size, the physicality, the mobility on the back end, he just seems like an absolute unit there. And he was always one name that I think would be always an early second. But if teams still aren't satisfied or convinced that he's going to be healthy long term, that injury may come back, he may fall. And I think he, out of the players that could fall, Gastrin, Boumedienne, and Amico, I feel like Amico could fall a little bit more than those two guys. So he's one of those names that I absolutely love. And his play kind of reminds me of what Stian Solberg and EJ Emery were last year. Mm-hmm. Mobile on the back end, but absolute units, and they're not afraid to hit. They're very physical, tough to play against, and I think that's going to be the direction, like you mentioned with your defender or your defender piece, is that they want size, they want intensity. If you could add a little bit of offense, great, but those physical attributes on the back end are going to be very big.
Yeah, they want mean and ugly, right? Like mm-hmm. the meat and potatoes that we're seeing in the final right now that are getting the job done, right? And
yeah.
And like even a Dmitry Kulikov can add in a goal here and there. So I mean that's kind of the mentality that I think the Leafs are going to have going into this draft, especially early on. Obviously things will change as the draft continues, but that's got to be. I think that's going to be the focus heading into this. You got Ben Danford last draft, and I think they're going to aim for the same type of player this mm-hmm. draft as well. You want to get into the third round, or you want to
I just want to highlight two players. I mentioned one of them on Prospect Corner, David Bedkowski. Mm-hmm. Owen Sound attack, again, kind of fits that mold of the big, heavy defender. But I want to talk about Ethan Zada very quickly, because I feel like this is a guy that's going to be on a very high, progression curve. Obviously, the Niagara Ice Dogs are kind of decent this year, but, all eyes are on Ryan Rubrick. And if Zada could be that veteran presence next year, I feel like his production is going to go a little bit up. 55 points in 68 games this year, not bad. But I feel like this guy's got a lot more growth to his game, and I think he could take a big step forward next year if you do draft him, and then the seasons after that. But the other one is Owen Griffin of the Oshawa Generals, and he was a stud for them during the playoffs when, a guy like Beckett Seneca was out. It opened up a door for him, and he was very productive. He was finding the back of the net consistently. And we talk about how Easton Cowan had a strong second half and even postseason that put him on the Maple Leafs radar. Owen Griffin is definitely that kind of guy that kind of feels like he's going down that Easton Cowan path where, he had a standout playoff performance. He's ranked lower than Cowan was. I believe Cowan was roughly a third rounder or pegged to go in the third round at the final rankings, but Maple Leafs saw that progression and took him in the first. So Griffin kind of feels a little bit lower than that, but I think he's a guy that you can take a swing on either with that second round pick if Toronto feels like he's not going to be there. But I feel like the third is the more safer option. So if they could try and swing either Zada or Owen Griffin third round, I think that'll be a huge win. And, Mark Leach coming in as a new amateur director scouting, I think those are two guys that I think could really catch the Maple Leafs' attention right there. Zada with his two-way play and his size. Griffin, he's got the same attributes, but a little bit more offense and the ability for that progression. Again, he started off hot, kind of cooled down a bit, but then again, the Ottawa Generals made a lot of moves to be a little bit more competitive and go down on a deep playoff run. But Griffin still made an impactful run for himself and improved the draft stock down the end.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, look at Peter for a lot of draft talk. He runs the draft conversation over at the Hockey Writers, and he's doing a hell of a job, getting close to 150 prospects. Great draft guide, free draft guide at the Hockey Writers if you want to get to know some of these prospects coming up in the latter rounds of the draft. Anyways, I'm gonna jump over the Daily Faceoff suggestion of Matthew Nyes with a offer sheet. We talked about this a number of times. I don't think he's gonna sign an offer sheet. I don't think he wants to sign an offer sheet.
It's out of the cards.
Yeah, we talked about the fact that signing an offer sheet this year for any player would mean that the team that signs them would likely have to give up a 2026 first round pick in a Gavin McKenna year.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with that.
I'm not seeing it. Anyways.
And I don't think Toronto's willing to let him go just to take a draft pick back.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you don't know where that draft pick's going to end up, and there's just so many pieces to it. Anyways, the last thing I want to touch on before we close it out for the week is the idea of the two rats in Florida. The suggestion that Sam Bennett could be fishing somewhere around the $10 million mark and Marchand around the $8 million mark. Me personally, I wouldn't take either of those players for that amount of money, especially with Marchand's age. Sam Bennett, if you got him for a few years at $8 million, I'd be more inclined to take that deal. I want to get your take on it because obviously Sam Bennett's having the run of his life in these playoffs. Marchand scored in the first 3 games of the Stanley Cup Final. Are we talking about like worthy candidates for $8 and $10 million respectively?
So I only put that in the notes because it's been a talk or the whole Sam Bennett discussion has been increasing, and everyone is going to point to like, oh, he's got a hot playoff run. He scored 16 goals so far in the playoffs. $10 million, give it to him right there. That just seems a little bit far-fetched in the sense that this is a guy that only had 150-point season in the regular season. Yeah, he's playing great in the playoffs, but it doesn't make me warrant $10 million so that he could be one of the faces of the league where you get 50 points in the playoffs, but maybe 16 goals and maybe 20 points in the playoffs. That's still going to be, I don't know. That to me is something that is not ideal. I would never give someone like Sam Bennett a second line. Well, I mean, Toronto did it with John Tavares, but at least John Tavares was very productive at the time. Consistent 80-point player. Toronto made the playoffs. He's had some good playoff success with the Islanders as well. That was kind of warranted, but 50 points to 80, that's a big gap right there. Honestly, I would not mind giving Marchand $8 million if it was on a short-term deal. If it was like 2-3 years, I'd probably be inclined to do that. That's the only way, because he's up there in age. At least he is a proven playoff performer, and this is a guy that could get under a lot of players' skins, even in the regular season. He's still really good for 50, 60 points. Let's not kid ourselves. Even at 37, I think he can still be very, very productive. And in the postseason, he just always seems to find that other gear. Now, can he find that gear with Toronto? Can he be that missing piece? Because we know how many times where it could be may seem good on paper, but when the actual results come in, it's probably going to be less than what's expected. But Marchand kind of seems like that guy. He doesn't care what anybody. He blocks out that outside noise, and he plays his game the way he knows how. And also, to be perfectly frank, I think Sam Bennett has been playing himself more as a villain than Brad Marchand, which is kind of odd to say at this point because of how more ratty Bennett can get, where he's stiff arming goalies in the head right now. He's done that 3 times in the postseason.
Every round.
Honestly, I'm kind of on the fence with that. If he's going to be doing that every single time, I don't want him on the team because George Peros is going to give him a 15-game suspension the first instance he does that. So to me, I mean, contract-wise, putting all that other stuff aside, I still think Marchand 3/8. I wouldn't mind that. At least it'll be more worthwhile with him getting a little bit higher than $6 million than Patrick Marleau as well. So to me, that's the road that I'm going down on.
Okay. All right. Just as we close it out here, this is from Ian Kennedy, CK. USA Hockey today reported that they've hit a record number of women's girls hockey registrations with 98,394 across the United States. It was a 5.11% growth from last year, far surpassing the growth in any other category. So the PWHL is doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Friend of the show, Julia Gosling actually just got picked up by the expansion team in Seattle. So
Congrats
she's
to
heading
her.
from Toronto to Seattle. New fresh start for a friend of the show. And best of luck in the upcoming PWHL season. Outside of that, we got a summer full of stories. We got a summer full of excitement with Mitch Marner and the Leafs and what's going to happen July 1, what's going to happen in the draft. So make sure you're tuning into the Sticks in the Six podcast. Crazy, Peter, that we've reached 200 episodes.
Only
Here's
seems
200.
like yesterday we started this podcast.
Yeah, it's insane. Here's to 200. Here's to 100 more. It's going to be an exciting run over the next season. And
I also
we're
just want to say it's been a pleasure doing this with you for 200 episodes, man.
You as well, buddy.
Let's just keep going. This has been absolutely fun. So I'm having a great time doing this with you every single week, or at least, or as much as possible to try and talk least with you and, shoot the shit every single time.
It's a ride, man. It's a ride, and we're going to continue to grow this show. Here's to another 100. Here's to another 200. We're excited to keep it going, and we're going to be back for next season. But we'll be here all summer long. And until then, go Jays, go! They're on one hell of a run.
Fire right now.
They're on fire right now, baby.
They've earned my trust right now, so let's keep this going.
That's right. Until next time, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like on this video, comment, let us know what you think. Johnny Toews in Toronto, Captain Serious, you want him? You don't? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, we're going to leave you with our good friend Alex Hobson and his latest single, 25.